So let us begin. Om Aginati Marandasya Gana Gana Salakaya Chakshurim Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. I was born in the darkness of ignorance, and my spiritual master is opening my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge. I offer my humble obeisances unto him. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Shrimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namane. Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pacharini Nirvisesa Sunyavadi Prasachadi Sacharini. Devotee always offers his obeisances to his spiritual master before speaking, because it's only by the mercy of the spiritual master that we can open our mouths to say anything that has any value. So, last Tuesday, Yoginath Prabhu explained very clearly our predicament in this material world. And we are definitely very much aware of this predicament these days. And devotees generally are aware of the actual nature of this predicament. Actually, COVID-19 is the tip of the iceberg. This is a reminder of our actual predicament. And to be aware of this predicament is actually a prerequisite for devotional service. And none of you would be sitting here today if you didn't have realization in this regard. And I'm remembering, I'm seeing all you young devotees, and I'm remembering when I was in my early 20s, I left home, my safe home in a small town in Quebec called Dorion, and I moved to New York City. What was I thinking? I don't know. Basically, I remember at the time, I didn't want to just become a housewife in the suburbia of Montreal. That really was not what I wanted for my life. So I figured going to New York would kind of shake off that possibility. And I wasn't content. Otherwise, I would not have wanted to move. And when I first came to New York, there was a play called Stop the World, I Want to Get Off. And I saw this advertisement everywhere, and it was amazing. It was amazing because I realized when I saw this, that's my mood. That's what I want. I want to get off. I don't like this at all. And the next few years actually deepened that. I saw the play, didn't help very much, didn't give any solutions. And the next few years actually deepened that anxiety. So when we want to get off the material world, we want to put an end to it. So what are the solutions? A lot of people actually turn to intoxication. A lot of people that are addicted to intoxication, they get there because they are so miserable in this material world. Other people go to I can't even say the word anymore, supercalifragilisticexpialidocious. That word is actually in the dictionary now. And that's like an illusory world of Mary Poppins where everything is perfect. Go fly a kite and everything's perfect. Other people immerse themselves into the rat race to the best that they can until the midlife crisis strikes. Some people go to shuffleboard when they get older, playing cards. Some people just they just can't deal with any of it. Suicide, total alcoholism or addiction. So devotees are not willing to accept this. There's a little voice inside that says there is a higher taste. It doesn't have to end here. And that's very bewildering because actually I remember at that age speaking to a psychiatrist. And I told him, that, the whole world seems to me like it's like a grade B movie. When you go to a really good movie, you're completely absorbed in the movie. You forget about yourself. You're part of that whole scenario. But when you go to a really bad movie, you never forget that this is a movie and I'm here and I don't know, should I leave or not? Or should I turn this off or not? So I told him, it just seems like this whole unreal thing. I can't relate to it. And he actually told me, he said, well, I hate to tell you this, but this is all there is. I went, oh, this is terrible. And I remember actually saying to him, if this is all there is, if you're really right, then I might as well just jump out this window and end it here. Because this is not acceptable. This is just, can't be. And I was right. He was wrong. I found out when I became a devotee, there is a higher taste. We can stay high forever. I don't want to disagree with Ghosh Thakur last week, but we can stay high forever. But to do this, we have to give up the intoxication of this material world. We have to actually stop trying to enjoy the pleasures and pains of material existence. That sounds a little strange to say that we're enjoying the pleasures and pains of material existence. But Prabhupada actually says this specifically in Krishna book. And that's what we're doing in the material world. We're trying to enjoy the pains and pleasures of material existence. There is always, even in the pain, some people actually enjoy pain. Some people don't even want to give up their miserable condition because they're afraid that if they give that up, it'll be worse. So they find some little bit of pleasure in their painful condition. But none of that works. What we need to do is actually, I'm missing a slide here. This is the one we're supposed to look at. We need to engage in activities which liberate from material entanglement and ultimately bring us to our constitutional position. So what is that? We talked about this when we talked about the jiva. Those are sanatana activities, that which has no beginning or end. That's Ramanujacharya's definition. That which remains eternally with us, whether we are in the material world or the spiritual world, we are always das and dasi. Actually, anyway, I'm not going to worry about it. I'm going to go back for a minute to the previous picture, which we should have looked at for a minute. It's a pretty ecstatic picture. You see on this side over here, Krishna consciousness comes west, mantra rock dance. This is when they were advertising all over the place. Stay high forever. And this picture of Prabhupada was supposed to be like, oh my God, I'm so high, I can't come down. So we have a picture of Prabhupada way up there high. And then we have, of course, this ecstatic devotee. I couldn't believe when I found this picture. This is actually Krishna consciousness. This is our original constitutional position, to be like that devotee. Even though sometimes we struggle a little bit, that's what we're going for. So these sanatana activities are based around the basic understanding that we are das and dasi. This is mostly not your generation, but Bob Dylan actually for some time took his spiritual life more seriously. And he understood this das principle. He wrote a song called You Gotta Serve Somebody. I don't know if any of you are familiar with Bob Dylan, but it's an amazing song. You may be an ambassador to England. You may like to gamble. You may be heavyweight champion of the world. You may be a socialite with a long string of pearls, but you got to serve somebody. Yes, indeed, you're going to have to serve somebody. Well, it may be the devil or it may be the Lord, but you're going to have to serve somebody. So this is our understanding, actually. We have to serve somebody. And a very good example when we talk about our intrinsic nature, who we really are, is water, a very familiar substance. Whether water is in an ocean, a pond, the garden, or my shoes, wherever it is always wet. Even when it is ice, it is actually wet. They don't feel wet. You see in that picture of a frozen sock that stands up on its own. They don't feel wet in this condition, but when they become warm again, they become wet. When they were frozen, it may have appeared that the wetness was gone, but that was just illusion. In the natural state, water is wet. So we often suffer from this illusion. We can call it a soxical illusion in the material world. We think we're the control, but actually we are dust. This is our eternal Sanatana Dharma position. And when we engage in activities which liberate from material entanglement, we are actually engaged in our Sanatana Dharma, Das and Dasi, on the transcendental platform. On the material platform, either the devil or the Lord we're going to serve. We're going to serve somebody, whoever we are in the material world, whether we're President Modi or whether we're an ant or whoever we are serving somebody. So there's a big controversy, actually, among spiritual seekers about what are the activities that will liberate. We have a nice picture of a sadhu here, and he may be engaging in some of the activities that we see listed here. Silence, yeah, he's got his mouth stitched together. He's retiring from the forest, away from the world. He's meditating on death. He has skulls on his earrings. He has tooth or skull, something around his neck. He's standing on his toes. He obviously gave away everything in charity because he's wearing a little piece of cloth. So I don't know if you can think of more, but there's so many different ways, ritualistic observances. There's some people who think that activities that liberate are ritualistic observances. You know, if we go through rituals, that will liberate us. But they won't. They won't. We can understand from the Vedas that they would get us to a higher planet. They might give us a little more peace in this material world because we're pious, but it won't do any more than that. Ultimately, they're all activities of renunciation. Do they actually liberate? That's not what Krishna says. Krishna says at the very end of the Bhagavad-Gita, chapter 18, verses 2 to 11, he reveals the most secret of all secrets, which is actually available to all of us who are willing to attentively hear without challenging. We don't even have to be perfect. We just have to hear without challenging, with a little bit of submission. Even if we have a bit of doubt, that's okay. That's okay. We can express our doubt, but we have to hear without challenging. Often you'll hear, if you listen to tapes of Srila Prabhupada or watch videos, you'll hear Prabhupada engaging with reporters. Some of the reporters come with a little bit of a submissive attitude. Swamiji, we would just like to hear about what you're doing. And Srila Prabhupada would reply very nicely to them, and there would be a nice exchange. Other reporters were just from the get-go, you say this and you're that, and like that. And usually Prabhupada would cut them down or just ignore them. What's the point of talking to such a person? So, what does Krishna say to Arjuna about renunciation, which liberates from material entanglement? Not foolish renunciation, but renunciation which actually liberates from material entanglement. So now we're starting with verse 2 of chapter 18. The Supreme Lord said, to give up the results of all activities is called renunciation by the wise, and that state is called the renounced order of life by great learned men. Some learned men declare that all kinds of fruitive activities should be given up, but there are yet other sages who maintain that acts of sacrifice, charity, and penance should never be abandoned. O best of the Bharatas, hear from me now about renunciation. O tiger among men, there are three kinds of renunciation declared in the scriptures. Acts of sacrifice, charity, and penance are not to be given up, but should be performed. Indeed, sacrifice, charity, and penance purify even great souls. So that seems to actually support what our little yogi is doing with his austerities. But let's continue a little longer and hear what Krishna has to say. All these activities should be performed without any expectation of result. They should be performed as a matter of duty, O son of Pritha. That is my final opinion. So we can't be attached to the results of whatever activities or austerities we perform. Prescribed duties should never be renounced. If by illusion one gives up his prescribed duties, such renunciation is said to be in the mode of ignorance. Arjuna wanted to give up his prescribed duty as a Kshatriya. Krishna said, no, you can't do that. That's in the mode of ignorance. Can you imagine? Even Arjuna can be in the mode of ignorance. Anyone who gives up prescribed duties as troublesome or out of fear is said to be in the mode of passion. Such action never leads to the elevation of renunciation. But he who performs his prescribed duties, only because it ought to be done and renounces all attachment to the fruit, his renunciation is of the nature of goodness. Now we're getting to the mode of goodness. And we have been told in Bhagavad-Gita that the mode of goodness is the stepping stone to transcendental realization. Anyone who gives up prescribed duties as troublesome or out of fear is said to be in the mode of passion. Such action never leads to the elevation of renunciation. But he who performs his prescribed duty only because it ought to be done and renounces all attachment. I'm sorry, I already read that. Things are a little confused here. Anyway, those who are situated in the mode of goodness, who neither hate inauspicious work nor are attached to auspicious work, have no doubts about work. And then finally, it is indeed impossible for an embodied being to give up all activities. Therefore, it is said that he who renounces the fruits of action is one who has truly renounced. And then in the purport, Prabhupada explains what true renunciation is. A person in Krishna consciousness, acting in knowledge of his relationship with Krishna, is always liberated. Therefore, he does not have to enjoy or suffer the results of his acts after death. So whether goodness, passion, or ignorance, we're trying to still enjoy in the material world. The only way to actually renounce is to give up the results and offer them to Krishna. That's it. The perfection of life. The soul can go back home, back to Godhead, by following these instructions. She or he has been engaging in activities which liberate from material entanglement and has been actually functioning according to his or her constitutional position or swarup. That reminds me actually of a story from my early days in New Vrindavan. There was a devotee there, his name is still there. His name is Advaita Das, Advaita Acharya Das, very wonderful devotee, very down-to-earth, ecstatic, kind of crazy, but wonderful devotee. And Srila Prabhupada was in New Vrindavan. And for some reason, at that particular period of time, devotees were talking about their swarup, their spiritual identity. And so Advaita Prabhu decided he would ask Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada is very bold. He said, Srila Prabhupada, what is my swarup? Prabhupada said, until you can control your senses, there is no question of swarup. And then he went on to explain how we are all das and dasi, all the different relationships with Krishna, whether it is as friend, as lover, as parent, are all based on das. So I was trying to actually look at a picture of Advaita Prabhu, but I couldn't find one. I did find this one, and I just thought, this is a wonderful picture here of devotees engaged as das and dasi in their swarup. Here, this devotee, Chaitanya Prabhu, is trying to save the prasadam from the cow, and this young boy who was given charge of this cow obviously was having difficulty, and the cow got away from him. She ended up with her face in the bucket of prasadam. And when I was further looking at the picture, I could see in the background, there's a devotee there with a little boy. And that's me. That's actually me with my son. And my son is observing this whole scenario. So we're all doing our service for Krishna. Even in this material world, we're so fortunate. So this is our swarup, das. So Lord Krishna gives instruction about the jiva acting in knowledge of his relationship with Krishna at the end of the Gita. But he actually gives this instruction at the beginning also. Sukhaduke samekvidva labha labha jaya jayo tata yudaya yujyasya naivam papam avapshyasi. Do thou fight for the sake of fighting, without considering happiness or distress, loss or gain, victory or defeat, and by so doing, you shall never incur sin. In the purport, Prabhupada says, Lord Krishna now directly says that Arjuna should fight for the sake of fighting, because he, Krishna, desires the battle. There is no consideration of happiness or distress, profit or gain, victory or defeat in the activities of Krishna consciousness. that everything should be performed for the sake of Krishna is transcendental consciousness. So there is no reaction to material activities. So this is our goal, transcendental consciousness, doing everything for Krishna. So that's all very good. But how does one do everything for the sake of Krishna? Kind of sounds like a computer instruction, which for me is not very easy. I have to be taken through it step by step. So the step-by-step Prabhupada gives us, Krishna gives us in Bhagavad-Gita. And it has to begin with faith, which leads to spiritual intelligence. A strong faith in Krishna consciousness that one should be elevated to the highest perfection of life is called Vyavasayatmika intelligence. Faith means unflinching trust in something sublime. When one is awake in Krishna consciousness, he need no longer endeavor for good results in his activities. When one is situated in Krishna consciousness, all activities are on the absolute plane, for they are no longer subject to dualities like good and bad. The highest perfection of Krishna consciousness is renunciation of the material conception of life. This state is automatically achieved by progressive Krishna consciousness. Notice those words, progressive Krishna consciousness. This is a very key word. For 99.99% of us, pure consciousness of Krishna, Krishna consciousness, doing everything only for Krishna, in full consciousness of Krishna, will not come instantly. The details of how that will happen for me and for you may be different. But the basics are, how come here, what's happening? But the basics are, Shravanam Kirtanam Vishnu, Smaranam Padasevanam, Archanam Vandanam Dasyam, Sakyam Atmanivedanam. So here we see devotees from Sharanagati engaging in all of these activities simultaneously. It's not like we necessarily do one and then we do the other. So what do all these words mean? Let's break that down. Shravanam and Kirtanam. Prabhupada says this is the basic. Shravanam means hearing, Kirtanam means chanting. Without Shravanam and Kirtanam, none of the others can really take place properly. Shravanam and Kirtanam means hearing the holy name of the Lord, and Kirtanam means chanting. Smaranam, after one regularly performs the process of hearing and chanting, and after the core of one's heart is cleansed, Smaranam, remembering. I was just reading a Prabhupada quote that someone sent me, and Prabhupada was talking about Smaranam, remembering Krishna. And he was saying, if you want to remember Krishna, read Krishna book every day. Even if you just read a little bit, read Krishna book every day. And then naturally, these pastimes will come to your mind. Padasevanam. Padasevanam means, pada means feet, sevanam means service. So service to the lotus feet of a devotee, of Tulasi, the Ganges, the Jamuna, all these processes of Padasevanam help one advance in spiritual life very quickly. We may not always have access to the Ganges or the Jamuna, but we all have access to be able to do a little service for a devotee. So we should not miss that opportunity. Archanam means worship of the deity. That worship of the deity, it can take place in the temple, or it can take place in our hearts. It can take place in our homes. We can have a deity of Krishna in our home. We can have a picture of Krishna in our home. There's actually no real impediment. Of course, Archanam also means deity worship with all of the wonderful details and instructions that come with it. But it can be as elaborate as that, and it can be as simple as worshiping the deity in the mind. There's a story of one Brahmin who was worshiping the deity in his mind, and he had a dream. And in the dream, he was making sweet rice for Krishna. And you don't offer sweet rice when it's hot. That's not very palatable. You offer it when it's cold. So he wanted to test it and see if the sweet rice had gotten cool enough to offer. So he put his finger in the sweet rice and he burnt his finger in the dream. But then when he woke up, his finger was burnt. So Krishna accepted that service. It's a wonderful story. Vandanam means offering prayers. Of course, we can offer our own personal prayers. We all do, especially when we're in desperate situations. But it's also, Prabhupada encourages us to read the prayers that are in Srimad Bhagavatam. Right now, I've been reading the prayers of Prahlad Maharaj, and they are so wonderful and inspiring. And so we should make sure to pray like that. Dasyam, assisting the Lord as a servant. Well, whatever service we can do to help push on this Krishna consciousness movement. Actually, by hearing today, by being present today, you're doing service. This is service for the spiritual master. When Srila Prabhupada was with us, he would go and visit people, and he would preach, especially at the very beginning. No one was doing anything for him. No one understood you're supposed to serve the spiritual master. So Srila Prabhupada would be giving instructions, would be giving class, would be cooking, would be doing so many things. And at the end of the whole event, Prabhupada would say, thank you so much for hearing. Prabhupada they didn't do anything, they just sat there. But Prabhupada was grateful that they came and heard. This Shravanam is service. Sakyam, in regard to worshiping the Lord as a friend, the Agastya Samhita states that a devotee engaged in performing devotional service by Shravanam Kirtanam sometimes wants to see the Lord personally. And for this purpose, he resides in the temple. So Sakyam means making friendship with the devotees, which means actually making friendship with Krishna, because we come to Krishna by the association of devotees. And finally, Atmani Vedanam, and that refers to the stage at which one who has no motive other than to serve the Lord surrenders everything to the Lord and performs his activities only to please the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So these 9 processes of devotional service, we may even feel that's a tall order. I don't know if I can do that. How is that going to happen? How can I make that manifest? I have to work, I have a family. So progressive devotional service is the key word. A journey is not completed in 1 second or a few minutes or even a few hours. We have to be patient. We have to follow the map, check the map to make sure we are on course. Check this map here that we're looking at. Am I engaging in some of these 1, 2, any of these activities today? Oh, I did. I did Shravanam, Kirtanam, and I did Sakyam. I associated in a friendly way with devotees. Very nice. And most important, even if we find that we have deviated a little or a lot, get back on course. Don't go back. You'll just have to start all over again. Don't go back. We have the example of Srila Prabhupada in his Grihastha life. Oh, sorry. Here's a picture of Srila Prabhupada with his family. You see Srila Prabhupada is holding, I think is his son, and his wife is standing, Radharani Day is standing behind him. His father, his sister, holding one of his other children. I think the young man behind his father is, I'm not sure who those two, I think they're his brothers. I think they're his brothers. So Srila Prabhupada, he met his spiritual master in 1922. He didn't take initiation until 12 years later. He was a householder. He had the responsibilities of a family. But after he met his spiritual master, he always kept that in his heart. I want to serve my spiritual master. Well, how can I serve him? All these brahmacharis and sannyasis that are with him, they can serve him so nicely. What can I do? I'm just a householder. But even during that time, he would find a way of serving. If someone needed something at the temple, he would provide. If one of the brahmacharis needed a place to stay, he would offer his place. He would go and associate with the devotees. And most importantly, he was always meditating on, I want to serve my spiritual master. How can I do this? And finally, after years of this meditation, finally, when he became older and his children were grown up, oh yeah, and actually in the meantime, he started a Back to Godhead magazine. After his spiritual master left the planet, he was still a householder, but he thought, I can write a magazine and I can distribute it. So he started doing that. So bit by bit, he was engaging in more and more and more and more service until finally he took sannyas. So there is no impediment to devotional service. Even if all we can do is desire, if we desire sincerely and strongly, Krishna will reciprocate with that desire. So we have a bright future. We can stay high forever. And by the mercy of the spiritual master. I love this picture of Srila Prabhupada because it really captures in his eyes that very merciful mood, his great compassion for not just his disciples, but for the whole world and for generations to come, for you, for all of you. So thank you very much for listening. If you have any comments or questions, please feel free.
Very nice class. I loved the pictures that you showed. They are so beautiful. Like, starting from the devotee who was, I think he was almost 6 feet high in the air.
Yes.
And then I really love that guy is trying to stop this cow holding from how you call it, from the tail. And then of course I love the Srila Prabhupada family picture. Wow, first time I'm seeing this. I've seen so many older pictures of Srila Prabhupada, never seen this one, never. First time with a mustache, big mustache.
Yes, it's very touching, isn't it? When we see Srila Prabhupada as a householder, we remember that Srila Prabhupada understands very well the material predicament. He understands that very well. It's not like he's some yogi in the Himalayas who has no idea what the material predicament is. He understands very, very well. So we should feel very confident in taking shelter of him.
Yes,
And
this is all mercy of Guru, I think, because after he met his Guru, he changed, and he changed half of the word.
Yes, he was a Gandhi follower. Yes. And his Guru convinced him that, well, that's very nice, but it's just a material solution. And a material solution is not what is needed. That was a kind of liberation the Gandhi people were looking for. They were looking to be liberated from the English. But even if you get liberated from the English, you're not liberated from your senses. You're not liberated from so many miseries in the material world. And people are not liberated from greed and anger. Whether that greed is coming from an English ruler or a lowly beggar on the street. Greed is greed and anger is anger. So material condition doesn't take away, doesn't liberate us from these qualities.
Right. Thank you so much. Very nice slideshow class.
Any other questions? No questions. Oh,
Jade is saying something.
Oh, I was just gonna say that I feel really inspired. Sometimes it's easy to think of all the things that we're not doing on the path, but in the list, it was nice to see. At least I try to do 2 things every day, and it's better than no things.
That's right. It is a path. And we're not always going to be perfect on that path. I'm 74 years old. Am I 74? Yeah, something like that. And I've been a devotee for many years. And I should be more perfect, you know. I should be a pure devotee. I should have no material desires. But that's not where I'm at. But that doesn't matter. There's a wonderful verse in the Srimad Bhagavatam. I should actually have it right here in front of me, and I don't for this class. I should have had it. Where Krishna is encouraging a devotee who is still entangled in material desires, and he still sees that he's still pursuing his material desires, and he knows it's not going anywhere. He knows actually there probably will be suffering because I'm pursuing this material desire. But a devotee who stays faithful to the process, who doesn't give up, that devotee becomes very dear to Krishna. That devotee becomes very dear. It's easy not to give up if you're perfect. If you're not perfect, it's a lot more difficult not to give up. But that's our test. That's how Krishna is testing some of us. When we just remain faithful, if we just remain faithful, the result will come. Guaranteed.
Yeah, I was thinking, Krishna says himself, Mama Maya. So my Maya. If he would have just said Maya, we would think, okay, we will handle Maya. It's his Maya. So I don't know how to handle it. So we have to be very patient and just keep going.
That's right. And when Krishna refers to my Maya, that actually should also encourage you. And that should encourage us, because it's not for no reason that the material energy is very strong. This is Krishna's Maya that we're entangled in. It's a very, very strong illusion. Very, very strong. I'll tell you a little story. It just happened to me actually when I was coming here to Mayapur. I had a lot of problems. I was supposed to be back in Mayapur in December, but Air India ticket agent did not accept my visa as valid, even though it was actually valid, and I had called the consulate before, 2 weeks before, to confirm the validity of it, and they said, yes, it's valid, no problem. But then I got to the airport, and they would not let me embark. They denied me, and I was just, that was it. I wasn't going to Mayapur. Actually, Air India also cheated me out of my ticket, but that's a whole other issue. So for a long time, I was angry at the embassy. I thought, they gave me a bad visa. But then I did some research, and I found out actually my visa is valid. The embassy was not responding to me. My visa is valid. What's going on here? So finally, Krishna inspired me. I wrote to one person at the embassy, and he responded. He said, your visa is valid, but we're going to confirm it. Please write to the second consular officer in Ottawa. So I did. He wrote to India. The whole process took like 7 weeks. I thought they just forgot about it. I finally got a letter that said that my visa was valid, referred to the number of my visa, everything. It was all there with the embassy stamp on it, everything. So that's it. I'm going. So 2 weeks later, I'm at the airport again. Air Canada this time, not Air India. So I had no qualms. I thought, for sure, it's no problem here. I was there for 1 whole hour at the booth where they give you the pass to get on the plane. You know, they give you your boarding pass, and they were saying your visa is not valid. I thought, what do you mean my visa? And then I pulled out the letters. I pulled out everything I possibly could, and I was showing them. And they're like having this big discussion, and pretty soon there's 3 supervisors, and the ticket lady is on the phone with somebody else, and they keep saying it's not valid, and I'm crying, and I'm like, oh my God, I'm not going to go to Mayapur again. I can't believe this. I was actually so disturbed that I felt like I was going to pass out. So I sat down. I thought, okay, I'm just going to sit down and I'm just going to chant. I'm going to stop trying to convince them. This was Krishna's Maya working big time. So I sat down and on my suitcases, and I just put my head down and I just was chanting. And I was focusing my mind on Lord Nrsingadev, even though it was very difficult. I was focusing on him. And through the haze of the conversations that were going on, I heard someone say, this is an FRO visa. I've never seen an FRO visa. I stood up. I said, there's no such thing as an FRO visa. This is not an FRO visa. This is, the FRO is the letterhead. The visa name and number is in the letter. Please read the letter. And I showed them the connection. And literally 3 minutes later, they were giving me my boarding pass, and I was shaking, filling out the tags for my suitcase because I was thinking, I've got to get out of here before they change their minds. And I got out of there, and my husband, he was in and out. He was trying to park the car and he couldn't. It was a problem. Anyway, he met me and he said, what happened? I said, I'm going. And it's at that point that I realized this is Krishna. This is Lord Nrsingadev, who directly interfered, because for 1 whole hour, this discussion of total madness was going on. And then within minutes, poof, the whole phantasmagoria just dissolved like it didn't even happen. So Krishna's Maya is very, very strong. We have to take shelter of Krishna. Sometimes it seems like, oh, who's Krishna? Krishna doesn't recognize me, doesn't know me. Who's Krishna anyway? You know, Krishna doesn't care about me getting on this plane. He does. And we may not always like the result. I was taking shelter of Krishna in December when I wasn't allowed on. I was praying then too. But Krishna gave me a different result. I had to accept that. And this time he gave me another result. I accepted this one more happily than the first one. But ultimately, you know, Krishna is controlling. Don't forget. And I pray to Krishna that I won't forget. Thank you very much for listening. I hope you all have a good night.
Thank you for sharing the story. Very nice.
Yes, it's inspiring, isn't it?
Oh my God, that seems like in a movie. Thank you. Thank you. It happened a few times with me too. It's beautiful when you have that sensation. It's beautiful.
Yes, it is. It's wonderful. Hare Krishna, Corey, Brandon, Ramesh, Jay.
Hare Krishna
Anand,
Mataji.
thank you so much. Have a good night.
Hari
Hare
Bol.
Krishna.
Hare Bol.
Thank
Hare Bol.
you.
Hare
You're
Krishna.
welcome. Hare Bol.
Vishwadika Prabhu,
Yes.
so if I ask, what is the rent there in Mayapur?
What is the what?
Rental?
Oh, that can be it depends on where you are. It can be 4,000 rupees a month or 10,000 rupees a month, 12,000.
So starting from 4,000 up to kind of 10,000.
Yeah. You're thinking of moving to Mayapur, right?
I'm very confused, Prabhu. It's not an easy decision, you know. I'm not surrendered to Krishna, so he's not thinking of me right now. But I don't know. It's very confusing. My mind is in Mayapur. My mind is in Vrindavan. My mind was in Sharanagati. I don't know.
Just pray to Krishna. Krishna will reveal.
Yes, Prabhu. That's what I'm doing.
Yes. Okay.
Thank you so much. Hare Krishna.
You're welcome.
Sarva Pranam. Hare Krishna.
Hare